Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new video of Not Your Money. Today we are with Francesco. Hello, Francesco.
Hi, Davide.
Francesco, let's start by asking, can we trust our money?
Great question. I would love to say we can, but I think the real answer is perhaps not. Let me try and explain. You see, the topic of money is often misunderstood, but money is actually just an idea. It's not backed by any intrinsic value whatsoever. Fiat money, as we think of it today, made up of all the pieces of paper or digits appearing on apps and screens, is just a value conferred to such currency by the government or central bank that backs it up. That's it. This is not the way it's always worked. In antiquity, in ancient times, and actually for the vast majority of history, we've had money types antecedent to paper or fiat money that were backed by commodities from wheat, shells, precious metals, and so on. So money is simply an idea. It's backed by governments and central banks, but they have failed. And therefore, if the question is, can we trust it? Well, we've got to be careful. We've seen plenty of examples where citizens of various countries have had to realize with their own eyes that they just couldn't trust it. Their currencies have failed.
Okay, thank you, Francesco. But what's wrong with fiat? Haven't they worked okay so far?
Again, as I mentioned, if we go back in history, money has worked in all sorts of different ways, and has worked pretty well, actually. It's adapted from different times and segments in history according to the needs of the time. We've used wheat, stones, cocoa, shells, salts, and precious metals. In fact, precious metals still, in many ways, are considered money in today's economy. They've evolved from one to another to become stronger, harder forms of money as the needs of growing societies increased. But also they become harder, they become less reproducible, less confiscatable. And that's why we've moved from, let's call them softer commodities like wheat or grain and cocoa to harder commodities with harder chemical intrinsic values like gold. But all that has left us today inheriting a fiat monetary system that looks like we see on the screen. A constellation of hundreds, I think there's 160 plus currencies around the world, all of which are effectively governed unilaterally by their own governments and central banks in whichever way they like. They can use monetary approaches, money expansion, interest rates, all of which can be used to improve their own currency versus the others. In reality, actually, although we have so many currencies around the world, there are only a few, there are only a handful probably that are considered strong currencies. The dollar, obviously, the euro, the pound. But try, Davide, walking into a supermarket tomorrow with $1 and get a coffee or a pack of gums, for instance. I don't think you'll get very far, you see. So we have to be careful about this. We have plenty of currencies, far too many, if you'd ask me, and too few of them are really hard or strong currencies. The vast majority of currencies you see across the world are very weak. And if you were to live in Africa, South American countries, the Far East, you'll typically find that your currency is not really considered particularly strong and very difficult to trade in and out with other currencies around the world. So it's not a great picture if you think of it from a technological advancement. In modern digital days, the picture we're looking at isn't ideal.
Thank you very much, Francesco. And can you do for us a recap on what functions does money serve?
Of course. Money serves three fundamental functions. It's used as a medium of exchange, as a unit of measure, and as a store of value. So we need it to exchange goods and services. That's pretty obvious. We need it also as a unit of measure. We need to be able to value what one good or one service measures and relates to one another. And we like to be able to store it over time. Of course, thinking of those commodity forms of money that I showed earlier, these factors and functions changed over time. In earlier barter economies, store of value was probably not really an important thought in ancient societies. It is these days, and gold, for instance, has been exceptional at store of value.
Thank you very much, Francesco. But considering these functions, how do you think our fiat currencies are doing?
The straight answer is that they're not doing particularly well. So I mentioned gold worked tremendously well as a store of value over time. What fiat brought, so when I say fiat, I mean the advent of paper money originally. Actually, paper money was introduced in the 14th century, if I'm not mistaken. But in today's world, a lot of those paper notes are largely replaced by centrally organized currencies, mostly available in digital form through apps and mobile banking. But nevertheless, they are expressions of money that is not anchored by anything substantial beneath them. What they have done is they've accelerated trade. They've accelerated and enhanced our ability to exchange goods in a cross-border, globally connected world at almost the speed of lightning. I say almost, as we still have settlements, T+2, T+3. When you send a payment out to Australia, for instance, it'll never quite arrive the same day. But nevertheless, it was able to accelerate trade in a way that gold wasn't able to do. So why has money failed us? Well, it's failed us as a store of value. What this chart shows us is that since we've left the gold standard, so since President Nixon in 1971 depegged the dollar from the gold standard, and with that, all other currencies depegged as well, they've all effectively fluctuated. They've taken their own course, but all of them took the same direction, if you like, the same trend. And it's scary, actually, when you look at a picture over 50 years. You might not notice how purchasing power changes on a year-on-year basis. But if you compare major currencies such as sterling, the franc, euro, and dollar against gold since the 1970s, they've all lost between 90 and 99% of their purchasing power. If you ask me, that's quite scary. So I wouldn't say they've done that well from a store of value perspective.
Thank you very much, Francesco. But why is our money devaluing?
Good question. There are many factors that play into giving a straight answer, but I'll try and keep it to the founding pillars that I consider to be the main reasons. First of all, our economic system is based on debt. We've always had a bit of debt. Debt is helpful to grow economies, to allow companies to grow. Too much debt becomes dangerous. And when we look at GDP, S&P indices, stocks to the moon, we often forget that that's driven by an underpinning level of debt that is very significant, and it's accelerating. The second factor is inflation. Since the Great Wars, largely due to an economist named John Maynard Keynes, we have adopted an economic system that expects a 2% inflation rate to be, let's call it, the healthy rate to run economies at full employment. So we're running our economies with inflation by design. Now, lately we talk about inflation as, a worrying factor, that there have been spikes in inflation throughout history, but we have to keep reminding ourselves, if we just ignore and isolate the last few years of higher inflation levels, that inflation is there by design. The 2% inflation target that governments and central banks are targeting every year mean that every year you can expect the price of any goods to go up by 2%, the year after by another 2%, the year after by another 2%, and so forth. Every year, we sometimes feel the pinch and immediate change in the supermarkets or the gas stations, but it's really when you stretch time over a 10-year period or over a generation that you start seeing remarkable changes. And that's why we've seen currencies debase by up to 90 or even 99%, as I earlier explained, particularly since the gold depeg. What you can see on the slide up on the screen right now is that the level of debt we've now reached in major economies is growing up by such a staggering level that the actual production of goods and services can't keep up. So when your debt level is higher than the level of internal products and services, so-called GDP, you have a worrying picture. You'd like to have an economic system that produces more than borrows. Otherwise, we're always chasing that debt, and it will become difficult. Right now, it's practically inconceivable to believe we can ever get rid of our debt levels.
Thank you very much, Francesco. But has it always been like that? Has money always been devaluing?
The short answer is no. This is quite a new phenomenon, I would say, and it's attributable to the fiat money era. If you can pull up the next slide, you can see that actually anytime our money has been anchored to a fixed unit of measure, be it gold, that's what we've anchored our economies to for centuries. We've had stability. You can see that in this chart before the wars. You can see that in this chart after the Great Wars of the last century and before the gold depeg. Otherwise, if you look at the intervals, so during the Great Wars, when all currencies depegged to allow all governments to manipulate their currencies for their needs, mostly to finance the wars, or after the gold standard, again, as I said, since Nixon depegged the dollar from the gold standard, and with that, all other currencies followed suit, you can see that we've had instability in terms of just fiat currency value relative to a unit of gold. That's worrying and something we need to keep in mind.
Thank you very much, Francesco. While listening to you, what the question that comes to my mind immediately is, can we go back to a gold standard?
Well, theoretically, we could, yes, absolutely. If we could get consensus across governments and political leaders, that's a possibility. In reality, that would be a bit of a step back. So let's not forget that gold is still a form of money. It's not money we exchange for goods and services every day, but it's still very much used for a store of value. In fact, in the distressed years and times we're under, lots of central bankers have increased the amount of hard money, gold, held in their central banks and vaults. So that's a testament of how, actually, in a way, we are still maintaining the value of gold in modern days. However, gold doesn't really tick the boxes of modern days anymore. In today's days, in a digital, global, internet-connected world, we need digital money. We need a new form of money which can enhance us and propel us into the future. Certainly, I think as we've demonstrated over the last few slides and previous questions, we need a form of money that does not devalue and depreciate over time the way it has over the last decades.
Thank you very much, Francesco. So where do we go from here? What do you see happening next?
So as I said, going back to gold would be a big step back in history, and moreover, gold is quite heavy and clunky to reintegrate in our societies. I'd like to start off with a great quote from Satoshi Nakamoto. For those of you that know him, great. For those that don't, he's the creator of Bitcoin. So 15 years ago, and I'll read it out, he quoted that the root problem with conventional currency is all in the trust that's required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. The key point, David, is trust. Whether we like it or not, fact is the authorities controlling money have effectively politicized money. I'm sure in most cases for good intentions, but the outcome has been the opposite. The outcome has been breaches of citizens and taxpayers' trust, and the outcome has been individuals like you and I finding our assets, our money, worth far less than what it used to. We need to turn towards sound money. I've explained before how in history, even with commodity money, as we've moved towards harder forms of money, sounder money, the value of their goods is more likely to sustain itself and be durable over long time periods. We need borderless and globally accessible, transferable money that's available 24/7 at a click of a button. We need that to be scarce, highly divisible, secure, and incorruptible. And as we can see here, as I've mentioned to a degree already, Gold, in a way, was our physical money. Fiat was our political money. Bitcoin in the future is going to be our mathematical money. The fact that we have millions of users that are already buying in and believing this can be and should be the only trustworthy computer science driven form of money for our digital era, I think is great testament of optimism for the future. So, in closing remarks, my advice to you is do yourself a favor. Learn more about what we've covered today. Learn more about money. Unfortunately, we don't get taught. We don't really cover these topics in school. I believe they should be a human right and a topic that we should really be learning from early ages. I'm teaching my kids what money is all about, and they all know what crypto is about. Starting with Bitcoin, of course.
Yes, we,
My
we absolutely agree. So, where do you think we can find some reliable information? Where do you think we can learn about money?
Sure, there's plenty of reading. There's lots of amazing podcasts out there, but three great books I've read recently are Broken Money from Lynn Alden, fantastic run through of monetary history from commodity. A lot of what I cover today is inspired by her work. Layered Money from Nick Bhatia also gives you a run through of history, but helps you understand how money has been layered over time. It used to just be solidly anchored to commodity, and then we've added fractional reserve banking, fiat money in different ways. So we've added layers of synthetic, if you like, money over the original precious metals, up to the point that we then just decided to let go of it. And finally, the Fiat Standard by none other than Saif Dinamus, who's also the author of the Bitcoin Standard. Three great books, guys. So have a read, learn, learn, learn.
Thank you very much, Francesco, for your time, and thank you everyone who listened to us.
It's been a pleasure, Davide. I really enjoyed the conversation.